So, greetings and welcome. I'm Marc Doughty, an information security engineer at Brown University, and my background is mostly in technical stuff, mitigating risks to systems and services. I'm not an expert on this subject, but when I saw the theme of the event, I thought it might be a good opportunity to step out of my comfort zone and help mitigate another kind of risk. Um, before we did get started, Before we get started, I did want to let everyone know that I'm going to be talking about cyber stalking and stalking in general, sharing some of my own experiences mixed in with them, and quoting some alarming statistics. If that stuff's likely to upset you, please feel free to skip the session. And most people here have already met my colleague, Pat Falcon. She's saved me several times today, and she's behind the scenes here, not really behind the scenes anymore, facilitating. And I wanted to give her a shout out. She's definitely been helping me for the last 20 minutes trying to figure out what the heck could be going wrong with my systems. So not too long ago, in the depths of the pandemic, I woke up on a typical weekday and I poured a cup of coffee and started my before work scan of news and social media. I don't know about you, but I like to start my day by harvesting all the fake internet points that have ripened while I was asleep. A few likes and comments from my friends on one app, a few hearts on cat pictures on another, no upvotes on the third. And then I opened the last app and my nervous system went into red alert for 24 hours. I had hundreds of notifications. A hot take I dropped the night before in a small thread had been screenshotted with my name and everything, shared out to 40,000 people who disagreed with me. My notifications were going off all day with people calling me names, putting words in my mouth, and lobbing threats that fell right under the threshold that awakens the community standards robots. I was completely unable to focus. Totally normal sounds of my neighborhood had me scanning the street from my windows. I asked my housemates to be more vigilant, and I had trouble getting to sleep that night. And I didn't sleep well. I checked the locks multiple times. I was lucky that the flurry of notifications wound down, and I was lucky that nobody decided to make a project out of harassing me. I still consider myself lucky that no one showed up at my house, and I wasn't cyberstalked. But I think I got a small taste of the kind of anxiety and fear being targeted online can cause. The whole thing got me thinking. If a bunch of angry strangers can make me feel uncomfortable, unsafe, and unproductive over the internet in my own home, what could a determined person do? What if I hadn't been as lucky? So before we dive in, I want to talk about a little about what cyberstalking isn't, because a lot of people casually use the term when we're like looking up a potential date or maybe trying to get the edge on a job interview or figure out what our clients like. Those activities don't meet the definition of cyberstalking. There's nothing wrong with checking on the person. If the person you just met online really works where they say they do, or whether they're a cat person or a dog person. That stuff just isn't cyberstalking. What defines cyberstalking is that it's harmful activity that's directed at someone with the intent to coerce, control, intimidate them with no legitimate reason. The activities can include harassment, doxing, phone threats, slander, libel, and defamation, blackmail, financial crimes, hacking, stalkerware, humiliation, revenge porn, directed trolling campaigns, and more. When these activities are directed at a person maliciously, they become stalking made possible through technology and are therefore cyberstalking. Cyberstalking isn't less than stalking. It's not a milder form of it. It's the same thing using a subset of tactics that weren't available in the past. And many jurisdictions rightfully treat it that way. Research shows that the psychological impacts of cyberstalking on victims are comparable to real-world stalking. This comes as no surprise to those of us who've grown up in a world so defined by digital services and social networks. The real world and cyberspace aren't two different things to most of us anymore. I think the pandemic made that especially true, even for people who had avoided, having heavy online presences. When we look at research, we see similar rates of victimization between cyberstalking and in-person stalking. In one cyberstalking specific study in Germany, 19% of people reported being harassed online for at least 2 weeks. I can't imagine having the feeling that I had for 2 full weeks in a row. One day was more than enough. In a broader American study that included real world and online stalking, about 1 in 6 women and 1 in 17 men reported ever being stalked. There are differences in the demographics when cyber only is parsed from stalking generally, probably because it's so easy to it's so easy to kind of the bar is very low for getting at someone online. Hang on. But the numbers across the board show that this is a serious problem that affects a lot of people. A world where 10% of people have been victimized to the point where they felt fearful for their safety is one where everyone needs to be aware of the threat. Personal security and cybersecurity aren't the same. I work in cybersecurity, not personal security, but they do share some characteristics. In cybersecurity, our job is to evaluate threats based on likelihood and severity and mitigate what we can. Nobody can eliminate all risks, and nobody wants to live in an air-gapped bubble. Usually, 2020 was a weird year. But we can direct our efforts where they make the most impact. I'm going to share some practical operational security mitigation strategies with you from the perspective of someone who mitigates cyber risks for a living.
Low-impact stuff that happens frequently, and others are about less likely but higher severity threats. Before I get into details on this, I want to state clearly that if you're being stalked, you should seek advice from appropriate resources for where you are.
This isn't meant to be a guide, and it's certainly not comprehensive. The scope of what I'm going to talk about from here on is limited to threats that originate from our intersection with technology. There's a great website for people of all genders at womenslaw.org that covers way more ground. And if you're a student, there are likely support avenues within the school that are appropriate first steps to take. All right. I hate to do this part, but no cybersecurity discussion, including this one, can escape what I call the big 3. First, if you share any online services, use very unique passwords for them. People often reuse passwords or reuse parts of them that make it easy to figure out what other passwords could be. And some people write down or reshare those credentials in ways that could end up in exactly the wrong hands. Many browsers and systems have built-in password managers that can help you keep track of things so that you don't have to memorize everything. Second, if you have an option to enable two-factor security, use it. It's a very powerful tool for knowing when someone's trying to access your account. If you're getting two-factor messages that you didn't expect, you should immediately change your password from a trusted computer. And third, check your account usage for email and cloud accounts. Most services let you see a record of devices that are connected to your account when they were last used. That can also be a great way to keep old devices from being used against you. I like to use a monthly bill I get as a reminder to check my account usage. So when I pay my phone bill, I also check my 2 main online accounts for access that I didn't expect. This is extra important if you sign into other people or share other people's devices or shared devices. Things like keyloggers can be on shared devices, or they could already be infected with malware that's stealing credentials that get used against you. All right, and I'm going to stop sharing and switch to the real view here. And now for the stuff I really wanted to talk about. First is something low impact but common. Social networks have made it easier for people to leverage trust relationships to spider web through a community. A few years ago, I was friended by a local themed meme account, and I didn't think anything of it because I like funny memes. But several months later, 2 of my friends messaged me to ask if I knew who was behind it. Apparently, what was going on was that the account was a sock puppet, and they'd been building networks of people to prey on, waiting for when they were in financial distress before trying to solicit them. When I looked carefully at the list of friends on the sock puppet account, I discovered a pattern of befriending one account, that was me this time, as a means to connect to all of their friends who met a certain profile. Before friending anonymous accounts or distant acquaintances that you've mutual friends with, take a look at their friends or who they follow. There might be strange patterns that belie ulterior motive. I'm going to get little series here and say that most stalking happens between people who already know each other. Somewhere between 80 and 90% of stalking is perpetrated by intimate partners and acquaintances. So when we look at that risk matrix, if 80 to 90% of stalking is happening between people who know each other, it really changes the way that we want to think about this, or think about online security. This means if someone's going to stalk you, they likely already have some knowledge of your favorite places, who your friends are, and some facts about you. You might have mutual friends or followers online that expose more surface area than you'd expect. And there might be things about you that they know can be used against you for social engineering attacks. The people in your building might already know them as familiar faces and assume they belong there. If you're trying to keep someone out of your life, discreetly letting your close contacts know is pretty important, even if you don't go into details. We had a situation in my house 2 years ago where someone who occasionally stays over had an altercation with a friend. And we decided it made sense to call a quick house meeting to get everyone on the same page that that friend no longer had any business here anymore. And I think everyone was much safer knowing that. Raising awareness with your close contacts in real life and online can help protect you from social engineering. If people know that you don't want contact with someone, they're less likely to share your information with that person casually. Knowing things like where you're from can be combined with social engineering to find out where you live. Using resources like public tax assessor databases and search engines, it's usually pretty easy to find relatives of people, and far too many parents and friends are willing to give away sensitive information like an address or a phone number if they're convinced that they're doing something helpful, like getting a misdelivered package or a lost wallet back to you. I would advise everyone to talk to their friends and parents about not sharing your personal information besides your email address. If someone has malicious intent, and that's the only path of communication they have to work with, they'll be leaving an electronic paper trail from the start. It's not perfect, and email can be used for harassment too, but email's far preferable in a lot of ways to a harassing phone call or a confrontation where you live. In my limited experience, the number one reason someone asks for a third party for someone else's phone number is because they couldn't get it directly. It might seem harmless, but getting a call or worse from someone you explicitly avoided giving your number to can be pretty upsetting. And I think the key there is to, I think especially when it comes to relatives, to talk to them and just say, hey, you would never give away my number if someone asked for it, right? Just give them my email address. I'd prefer that. It's much easier, and I don't want to get any weird phone calls from people. One way to reduce the chances that someone will be able to find out where you are, is to carefully review photographs before posting them. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and it often takes just one picture to narrow things down to a specific room or floor of a building. Things like business names, landmarks, and even angles of buildings in the background give away a lot of information. Funny story I like to share about this is that 2 years ago, my wife was in London on a business trip, and she sent me a picture of the sunrise behind two iconic buildings. And 2 minutes later, I sent back a Google Earth screenshot centered exactly on her room in the hotel. In the IT security industry, we also, on Twitter and stuff, people will share kind of like scavenger hunt photos where they do similar stuff. It's like, look, tell me where I am. And the answers usually come in very, very quickly. We should be aware of how much information we're encoding in the media we share. A picture from street level in Times Square says, I'm in New York. But a view out your hotel window might say, I'm in the southeast corner of the 10th floor of a particular hotel. For real-time mitigation of this kind of threat, you can avoid checking in publicly to places on social media until you've already left or until the next day. If someone knows where you're likely to hang out, they can keep an eye on that business's social media feeds for either check-ins or photos, other people's photos that might include you. This is something you might want to coordinate and normalize with your social group, because the impact is greater when there are fewer chances that people will give away each other's locations in real time. My friends and I frequently enact a no check-ins and no tags until the following morning rule. It's something we've done just to avoid unexpected drop-ins. The next one is not easy, but it can dramatically reduce your chances of being spied on. I would always try to maintain strict privacy on electronic devices. With physical access to your device and your passcode, someone using your phone or computer can install software that persistently spies on your device or sets up cloud synchronization to another. If you use these devices for school or work, the acceptable use policy that we've all clicked on and we all, I'm sure, follow for our organizations, that can be used as an excuse for why you don't share your device. It's a great reason for not sharing your device, and it's a great reason for keeping personal and work machines separate too. But you can use that. You can say, "I'm sorry, I can't share this because I signed an agreement that I would not let anyone get to the device that has my two-factor on it." Personally, I think we should change the culture on this so that we view wanting access to another person's device as a red flag. I know that's not possible in all circumstances. But I think if you can keep your device to yourself and not share a password, not let people use your phone or your computer, that's a great thing to do. Another thing you can do to kind of mitigate some of that threat is to learn the guest user or set up an additional account for someone that's less privileged. So most computers have an ability to set up kind of a second account, unclick the make it administrator button, and you can let someone browse the web. You can fast user switch to them or switch users to them. And when they do that, they won't have access to your stuff. It's not bulletproof, but it's pretty good. Another part of this is that, you should be suspicious if someone offers to sideload apps on a device, because they could be offering you an app or a program as a way to sneak other software in. So if one of your friends or a partner wants to sideload an app or crack your phone to install something free that normally you'd have to pay a few dollars for in the App Store, but you can sideload it, that in itself is pretty suspicious. And the reason I talk so much about that, because I don't think it's tremendously prevalent, but is that the recovery from that takes time and expertise. The recovery from having a device compromised takes a fair amount of time. It's easier than it used to be, but you'll likely have to kind of start from scratch and reset the device and reset any other devices that you use, and then reset passwords on all online services that you've used connected to it from, and maybe even go as far as credit monitoring. So I look at that as a big risk. It's a low likelihood, high severity threat. And yeah, so those are the things that came to my mind when I kind of made a bullet list of what I think some of the most common items on the threat matrix are. And yeah, so that's pretty much all I have, but I can't drive in enough that the big three are really, they're mentioned everywhere for a good reason. With two-factor alone, you can really get a good grip on making sure that only you are using your account. But thanks. I don't know if both folks can tell. I'm a little out of my element here.
You're just fine, Mark. Mark, I was going to put into the chat and the big three again. There was the two-factor, unique. Is it unique passwords? No.
Oh, the big three.
Yeah. What were the big three? I was just going to put it in the chat again. Two-factor.
Yep. The unique passwords, two-factor, and checking your accounts occasionally.
And I was going to ask you about that, and checking accounts. Yeah. So and we're inviting people who would like to ask questions as well.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
But opening up, because we got lots of that, which is good. And my question that you mentioned that something about checking account usage for high use, and I just wondered if there was any, give an example on that. So I know one thing, like for Google Mail, you can check the activity on the account and look to see if there's someone that may be using your account from an IP address you don't recognize. But give an example of an account where you might see high usage. Were you thinking of anything in particular?
Well, it wouldn't be for something necessarily like bandwidth. I think that's a little difficult for most people to monitor. But certainly, if you've been at home and you see a lot of different IP addresses in strange locations, that could be an indicator that your account is being used elsewhere. Another thing is like high use. It would be a lot of devices that are connected. Making sure that previously used devices or previous instances of devices that may live in backups and stuff are deactivated is a great way to kind of shore up your own cybersecurity.
So there was a question. Nick said, I found that one of the biggest challenges in personal security is getting my friends' family to care as much as I do. Any advice on how to do that?
Yeah, I would make it personal. And that's where I talked about kind of like talk to your parents about this stuff is, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So, and a lot of people aren't as exposed or just don't have the same risk profile as others. So my dad has a flip phone and barely ever turns it on. He probably isn't fully aware of how thoroughly my information is shared out there. And he's probably not aware of how little tidbits could be used against me. If I was trying to maintain a low profile. I'm not, but folks who grew up in a world where the telephone was the number one method of communication might not fully grasp how much data is out there. And I think also conversely, people who are so used to sharing everything might not realize that a picture often isn't just a picture, that it's giving away a tremendous amount of location data, even if it's not us. I see someone in the chat is mentioning EXIF data. So that's the extended information within a picture. A lot of times social media networks will strip the EXIF data out of something, or they'll use it for their own purposes to kind of like suggest a check-in, but the downloadable from the website won't include the EXIF data. And EXIF data definitely is, risky. It does spill some. And like I said, most social media networks strip it, but it's pretty easy to tell where a photo is. And you don't need the EXIF data. You don't need a GPS coordinate to locate a lot of photos, especially if you can narrow things down dramatically by saying, you know what, this is on a college campus in this city. There are a handful of college campuses in this city that I'm in, and it would be relatively easy to kind of just spin around in Google Earth and figure out where a photo was taken from. Someone else mentioned personal VPN if using public Wi-Fi. Yeah, most websites now and most browsers are using HTTPS, which does a fair amount to kind of obfuscate the actual traffic or encrypt the actual traffic. But certainly anywhere where you're using internet is going to leak out which sites you go to, not necessarily what you do on them. The situation there has improved dramatically in the last couple of years, and it's improving even more with DNS over HTTPS. But there's not really a consensus on using a private VPN. I don't use one, but I've tapped my own traffic before, and pretty much everything I do is HTTPS. So all someone is going to see is that this person went to Bank of America, this person went to Facebook, this person went to one of these services.
So attendees, are there other questions that you have, or does is this? I hope no one has a story similar to Marc's with this traumatic kind of event waking up to someday. So I could tell this was hard for you, Marc. It probably stirred up those memories putting this together. So appreciate you personally sharing that and some of the mitigating ideas that you presented today. So anyone else in the chat have a question or so for us?
I did want to say for Nick Bash's question or his statement that getting people to pay attention is I think making it personal for the people around you is a great way to do it. It's like, please don't share my information. Please, please protect yourself digitally in in my presence. Please protect my digital my location from your social media feed or whoever might be watching it. Kind of leaning on the same tactics or leaning on the same buttons that social engineers use to get information. We can lean on each other to help tamp down what gets inadvertently shared.
I'm going to say that, so some of that information that's shared out there can be used in so many different ways. Presentation earlier, the FBI agent was talking to us about was kind of targeted phishing. And I think in a story that I have for a relative that was got caught in one of the top scams, the kind of romance scams, losing thousands of dollars. In this case, it's probably someone who wandered off into a site and just didn't quite know enough and shared a little bit of information enough that someone could sniff a victim out. But information could be collected to do targeted phishing. Greg's point about location services and phones can be a benefit or curse. A lot of I guess that's it with technology, the love or hate it. It can be wonderful, but it's made our backyards the global and so much more to have to pay attention to and be aware of.
Yeah, for sure. And I've always fully embraced kind of the technology that's been made available. I've eagerly signed up to every social network that I thought was worthwhile and shared stuff out and really tried to participate and make the internet a better place by being a joyful participant in it. But I have so many friends who have had awful experiences and mysterious experiences, and not understanding how this person knows where I'm going to be, things like that. I wanted to shine some light on tactics that a stalker could use.
Yeah, Rory is, I see in the chat, yes, finding your example very helpful of how a cyber criminal can use information to hurt them. And it means a lot for non-security people. So yeah, putting it in personal story, but also just, the concepts and threats are too abstract and challenging to be inspired to take action on when you don't have a concrete understanding. In the hotel picture, Google Earth example is a perfect demonstration of this.
Well, thank you.
Well, have a going gone for any last questions or comments?
Yeah,
we want to leave it open for you. We have a couple of minutes left, but
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I was pretty frazzled at the, I got started pretty frazzled here by not knowing how to get in.
yeah, it's a cool interface, but it's something very new. So
That was
first,
my fault.
first, no, first time in with this, and so I do appreciate everyone that was able to join us this afternoon and your patience for letting us get settled in. And I very much appreciate Marc for all of your tips and research that you did. I had put in the womenslaw.org in the chat, but I'm just mentioning that again as a place for some background. Oh, here is, thank you, references
Yeah.
and sources. So if there's anything you want to read out, I know that there was a lot of research that went into this. And again, just dealing with like, it was a difficult memory.
Yeah, I was lucky, but I had never been scared in my home before, and that was it kind of started spinning a whole new gear in my head, and I'm still trying to I'm not traumatized by it, but I'm trying to figure out how to help other people, knowing that this happens so commonly now, or so frequently.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody then, and have a good rest of your afternoon, and enjoy the rest of this great conference. And thanks particularly to Stanford and your whole crew for putting this together and inviting us to be part of it. So
yeah, thank you very much, and thank you, Pat, for helping me out and getting me in here. All right.
okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.